Today at Better Bee, we're going to show you how to set up a Ross Rounds Comb Honey Super. The frames, the foundation, the springs. A new super comes all set up with the frames and the rings in the frames. And you'll also need some foundation, which is that small packet. You will get an assembly book and a nice little book that describes how to get your bees to work the best for comb honey. This is the foundation pack, and comb honey foundation is extremely thin stuff. It's thinner than crimp wire foundation, and of course it has no wires because a person is going to eat this in the end. Comb honey is meant to be eaten in its entirety because beeswax is edible. So when you unbox your super, take out the springs that hold the follower board. Here's a frame. It has 2 sides and 8 rings. That's the foundation, and I'll show you how to put in the foundation and put them all back into the super. So I've got all the frames laid out in their matching halves, and just lay a piece of foundation on every other one. So you're getting 1 foundation per set of 2, which is 1 foundation for each frame. When you put the frames back together, you'll see that they have little bumps at the corners that have to fit into small holes. Make sure that there's no crack running down the middle, and everything will fit into the super perfectly. So when you put them in, snug them up against the side that has the permanent follower board, and at the end we'll put in that removable follower board with the 3 springs. Put in the follower board. These little arched metal pieces are springs. Put in 3 springs. Pry that again to make sure it's tight. It's important that everything be tightly together and that the fit be perfect so that no crazy comb gets built. Because we want these round combs to be very pretty in the end. We can't be trimming off little bits of crazy comb. So that's all you would have to do when you received your first Ross Rounds Super and pack of foundation. But what if it was your second year and you had already harvested the comb? You would have to replace the rings, because when you sell the comb, the rings go with the comb. So I like to lay out all the clean frames, grab a bunch of rings, and just loosely lay them down. You'll notice on the rings there are these contours and little cutouts. There's a teeny cutout there, a very wide cutout, and a tiny little cutout opposite the other tiny one. Those have to face just like this along the frame, and they fit into small notches on the brown frames. So my habit is to just grab an arm-long length of rings out of the pile and lay them all out loosely, and then I go into the job of pressing each one down into its perfect little spot with the notches. So getting them tightly down into the notches is what allows you to put those frame halves together tightly. And in the end, the matching rings, 2 by 2, will become 1 comb. See those bumps down there? If you feel like you've got it lined up, but it just won't sit flush, you don't have it lined up. Here's a little piece. I have to rotate it a little. Now it goes in. That's good. And just like I showed you before, put in a new sheet of foundation for every frame. Squeeze it down nice and tight and flush. And from that point on, everything is the same as what I showed you before. Now, how do you get your bees to create comb honey? It is a really intense flow that's needed, a strong, fast nectar flow. And you also need an extremely strong, populous hive. It's all laid out in detail in that small booklet that comes with your super. But those are the two key things: a strong, fast nectar flow that might only last 7 to 10 days, but be amazingly consistent and strong. And you need a strong hive, and strong hive meaning very populous. As that week is going on after I've placed a Ross Round super, I like to just peek in and see how they're doing. And here we can see they've drawn the comb out, but they have not capped it yet. This is the top of that Ross Round super, and you can see they are capping it at the top parts. So it just needs more time, maybe another 5 or 6 days, and check it again. After we harvested that super, we put it in the freezer. That's to kill any wax moth eggs or tiny wax moth larvae that are already in there. Just keep it for 3 days in a bag so that when you take it out, any condensation will form on the bag, not on the surface of the comb. So I got to open it up, same thing with the springs, pry them out. And get that follower board out. And then we're going to start seeing how the bees did. I have to say the nectar flow this time was not as great as I thought it was going to be. Here you can see they didn't finish this frame, which was by the wall, but we'll probably get some good combs the closer we get to the center. That one's not so great. Here's a couple. They're fully capped except for some spots around the edges. They wouldn't be great to enter in a competition, but they're certainly fine to sell, and it's going to be delicious. So remember the crack down the middle. It's going to be a little harder this time to pry it apart, and you've got to be careful not to squeeze or drop these combs as you work because they're really delicate. So now I'm going to grab one with all my fingers, not squeezing just on two sides. We have to distribute that grip so that we're not squeezing it and hurting that delicate comb. We rip it off. That's the foundation that's between the rings. Carefully easing it out. We're going to trim off that foundation. Just be really careful. It's easy to squeeze too hard, and then you've burst some of the cells and the honey starts leaking out and it doesn't look good. Oh shoot, now look what I've done. I pulled one ring right off and the Ross Rounds didn't come out as a unit. So what can I do here? Well, I can't sell it, but I could eat it myself. So next one looks good. Get that one out. This is the way they serve comb honey on buffets or at breakfast in Europe or Australia. They just put it on a plate and people cut off a piece to put on their toast. So get yourself a sharp knife and kind of whittle off those bits of foundation and clean up that edge because that's where the label is going to go. If there's any propolis along the edges, just kind of clean that. If there's any small flecks of stuff on the surface of the comb, delicately flick them off. So what we've got here is kind of a range of quality, getting better on the right, less open cells, 6 kind of mediocre, 7 not so great, quite a collection that are just not saleable. So we could just melt it with our cappings from extracted honey harvest. These are the covers, opaque and clear, and typically you put an opaque one on the bottom and a clear one on the top. And those little notches, remember that the rings had notches? They also have notches on the covers. See the little notches here? You gotta just line these kind of cutouts on the ring up with those bumps, not notches. Line the cutouts up with the bumps. I would pick the side that looks the worst and put it down towards the opaque cover, and put the most pretty side upwards to show through the clear cover. And there you go. Be really careful with these clear covers because they scratch very easily, and it's nice to have them looking as sparkly and as good as they can look for a gift or for a sale. So this label is going to wrap around and tape those covers right on, and they can't be taken off until the customer peels the label. Watch out when you roll it around because it has one end that should wrap over the other end. So we'll start with this end and just really carefully line it up. And sometimes it kind of creeps as you're wrapping it around and it doesn't line up. So just don't tug it tight. Just be really light as you roll it around, and don't force it. Ours has a skep. It overlaps that other end. Here's a spot where you can put your name, either write it on before you wrap this onto the comb, or put your own small sticker on the side so that people know where they got this honeycomb from. So this was our first attempt at a nectar flow that wasn't really amazing, and we got about 7 out of that super of 32, and about 12 more that were okay. Yum!